Well, hello everyone. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. You are listening to Business Casual, our weekly podcast with my co-hosts Maria Wickvilla and Caroline Diarty Edwards. As you well know by now, Maria is the founder of Applicant Lab. If you need help with your applications going forward, this is a great platform to use. Meantime, Caroline, of course, is the co-founder of Fortuna Admissions, one of the leading MBA admissions consulting firms that has a sort of a super group of former MBA admission officials who now help applicants. We just ran one of my favorite stories of the year, and I want to share it with you. It's our Meet the Class story. In this case, it's the incoming MBA class of 2027. These folks are showing up on campuses all over the world as we speak. If you want to know who is actually getting an MBA these days, this is a great story to look at because we have profiles of these students and their backgrounds and what they hope to achieve with an MBA degree. And as you can expect, they're representatives from the world's best business schools. And, they've studied everything from chemical engineering to Asian studies to art history as undergrads. They've worked for companies as different as McKinsey, DC Comics, Marvel, and the White House. They've gained experience in algorithm development, entrepreneurship, and even beer brewing. And of course, you have a few lawyers, physicians, and aspiring lawmakers mixed into the group. So, what it does represent is an incredibly diverse array of people who are getting the degree. And it gives you a sense of how enriching an MBA experience might be because you're going to come into contact with people who share one thing with you, your aspiration to lead a successful and meaningful professional life. But you're also going to meet people who are very unlike you. And these people are going to open your eyes to other possibilities in your own life and enrich your life by sharing their life experiences with you. So, these profiles, and this is how we pick these people. We go to the schools and we ask them to nominate a group of incoming students who'd be willing to tell us more about themselves. And then we pick from them representative students from each of the top schools. And of course, there's Harvard and Wharton and Yale and Michigan and MIT and London Business School and NCOD and IMD, but also from the IIMs in Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta. So you have a rich array of people from all over the world attending schools from all over the world who share their stories. I mean, Caroline, who pops out to you? I mean, some of these stories are amazing. And I have to say that I think some of the students are nominated and brought to our attention by schools in part because they are amazing. So on some level, maybe this isn't the totally representative group of MBAs. These are people who have great stories.
For sure. It is not exactly, the list is not representative of the composition of a typical classroom. However, you definitely have plenty of people at business school who do have very diverse backgrounds. And so I think that perhaps the investment bankers and consultants of the world are somewhat underrepresented on this list. But nevertheless, it's really a great way of showcasing the diversity of backgrounds that you do encounter at business school. And that is a wonderful way of enriching the classroom and bringing together different experiences. And I think also the value of your list is that it shows candidates that you don't have to have a typical pre-MBA background to be able to stand out and get into business school. In fact, quite to the contrary, it can be an advantage to have done something very different. And I think, unfortunately, candidates sometimes underestimate their chances if they're coming from a non-traditional background because they think that if they haven't worked at McKinsey or Goldman Sachs, then they haven't got the right credentials to get into a top school. But actually, the schools have plenty of candidates from the typical feeder firms, and they are looking to complement that with people who've done some pursued very different careers and have quite different perspectives to bring to the classroom. And so I think, you have a wonderful array of backgrounds here. And it's fascinating to delve into these stories. So, of course, I couldn't help myself, but first of all, look at the INSEAD profile.
I knew you would do that.
So, would hate to disappoint you, John. So, the INSEAD contribution is from Armani Fancy. So, she is, looks like she's probably a dual national from Oman and the UK. And she is a professional ice skater. In fact, she was a professional skater with Team GB. So that's very impressive. And she won the TV show Dancing on Ice in both the UK and Germany.
Hey, that's something.
So yeah. But she also comes from a family business background. So that's what she's been working in before. She went to business school and she plans to return to family business or start her own company post MBA. And I found it really interesting to read what she loves about INSEAD. So she talks about how she can just look around the table when she's working in a team and she can get input on the stock market in India, the economy in Colombia, the influence of tech on finance in America. So that just incredible diversity of perspectives that you get in a very international program like INSEAD that is absolutely fascinating and from which you can learn so much. And I found it interesting that she also talks about why she picked INSEAD and that she found that it had a really strong curriculum for decision making and that she decided that's going to be critical for her in her future career. So, I thought that was, and she also, of course, talks about the benefits of doing a 1-year program and the efficiency of that format rather than the 2-year program. So it looks like she is doing a lot of different things at the school and probably not getting a lot of sleep so far, judging by the number of things she's involved in.
Now, I don't know how much ice skating there is in Fontainebleau. Do the ponds and lakes freeze over there?
It's more a place that lends itself, I would say, to horse riding. It's
There you
one of the
go.
horse riding capitals of Europe. I don't remember much ice skating myself.
Indeed. These profiles are really a lot of fun because we ask some interesting questions that are both, result in entertaining answers, but also answers that can help you as an applicant. For example, we ask, give us a fun fact about yourself. We asked that aside from the classmates and location, what was the key part of an MBA program that led you to choose a particular business school and why is it important to you? We have customized questions for each of the schools. In the case of Chicago Booth, for example, we note that the Booth MBA is known for being highly data driven. How does the program's focus on quantitative analysis and decision making appeal to you? How have you been able to leverage this approach in your career so far? We asked them what course, club, or activity excites you the most at the school. What's been your first impression of your classmates and alumni you've met so far? And we asked them to tell us your best story in your early impressions. What makes the city or town that your school is located in a great place to earn an MBA? We asked them to describe the biggest accomplishment in their career so far. And then here's the helpful part for a would-be applicant. What advice would you give to help potential applicants gain admission into the school's MBA program? So there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. All you got to do is kind of dig through it. Or if you already have a target list of schools, what I would always do is go to the Meet the Class for that particular school, and you'll get the advice of a dozen or more of the latest students offering their counsel on how to get into the program because, of course, all these schools are very highly selective. One person who stood out to me, and this also shows great diversity, is Mariana at the Chicago Booth School of Business, who actually spent 5 years at the National Gallery of Art as a senior advisor to the deputy director. And sure enough, she's going to Chicago because she had very little quantitative exposure. And she really wanted to beef up that part of her professional life, which makes a lot of sense to me. Well, fun fact about this woman, this is really cool. Over the summer, she and her fiance let their lease in DC expire in June and left their jobs to travel around the world before moving to Chicago for the fall semester. The trip involved 26 flights, took them to 18 countries from Japan to Montenegro to Portugal before ending in Morocco with the school's pre-orientation group trip. Pretty cool. I didn't even think the National Gallery of Art would pay a salary high enough to finance a summer of travel like that, but there it goes. Maria, do you have a favorite?
I have a couple of people who jumped out at me. So, following Caroline's lead and choosing someone from my alma mater,
Here comes Harvard.
I mean, I can't, I gotta represent. Like if, so Connor Elkin, from HBS. So speaking of fun facts, his fun fact was I was headbutted by a shark while spearfishing in Florida. So in case anyone listening is curious, like what's a guaranteed way to get into Harvard Business School? There's the secret. Just go headbutt a shark and there's guaranteed admission. So, yeah, I'm just kidding. But anyway, so Connor, what was interesting is that Connor's from the military, but within the military, he was actually involved with the Air Force ventures and they were doing investments and working alongside cutting edge AI and technology partners to try to, introduce these technologies into the military and specifically U.S. cyber warfare. So what I think is interesting about this profile, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up, is that there are so many applicants from the military, and thankfully, many schools are military and veteran friendly. But sometimes because these military roles, they can often seem very similar on paper, and sometimes people will say, well, how can I tell if I'm going to be the one to get into, say, an HBS versus another school? This is where I tell people to try to find your resume twin, someone who before business school was doing something similar to you. And I actually have in the past worked with someone who had a similar profile to Connor, who went to another one of the top three schools, who was also working in the military, but on very cutting edge technologies and implementing those cutting edge technologies prior to business school. So that's like a good guidepost of, the military itself is a great leadership training ground. But within it, there are also opportunities to not only be a people leader, but to also develop some really strong technology, and forward looking, venture looking type of perspective. So I thought that was really interesting. I think I would have found it interesting even if he weren't going to HBS. But, and one of the other things that I liked about his profile is when he was asked, what was the moment that you thought HBS was the right moment for you? He cited two things. Number one, sitting in on the class for the first time and watching the case method in action. He said the energy in the classroom was palpable. I think anyone who has attended an HBS case discussion can vouch for that. The energy is definitely a big part of it. The discussion is really engaging. Everyone has to show up having read and prepared. And so it's a level of preparation and discussion that is, I think, really just an exceptional part of the experience. And then the other thing he said was that everyone was just so kind to him. His wife was accompanying him, and everyone was so nice and kind. And that's also when he knew that it was a community that he wanted to be a part of. And I think that there's often a stereotype that all of these business schools are full of sharp-elbowed, competitive capitalists who go for the jugular and are very mean and cruel. That's really not true. I mean, of course, every school is going to have some people like that because, humans are human. But for the most part, many of these business schools have incredibly kind cultures. And so I was thrilled to see him point out that aspect of the school as well.
Maria, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think you're right. The stereotype is you have all these masters of the universe who are overtly ambitious, who are in fact greedy, who just want a lot of money, and that's why they go into business school. I'll tell you, that's not true. It's never been true. Yes, of course, you're going to get a few Wall Streeters or hedge fund dudes, or even some tech bros that may fall into that category, but they're in the minority because they'll get weeded out by admissions. And what this story brings to life every year is that truth, that the stereotype doesn't apply. I found myself attracted to this one person at Darden who's featured here, who actually launched a comic book series with Marvel Comics titled Magic. So she was a writer for Marvel. Her name is Ashley Allen. Her fun fact wasn't even that. She's from Minnesota, but she was on the Danish national lacrosse team. How that happened, I have no idea. She has a degree in economics and international studies from Macalester College. And she's going to Darden, and you mentioned the case study. Obviously, Darden is a case study school, and that was a key attraction to her. But here's what I really like. We asked her, what are your early impressions of Charlottesville, which is where the University of Virginia is and where I live right now. Here's what she says. I love it. Charlottesville has the tight-knit community of a small town with all of the amenities of a larger city. My favorite thing so far is how integrated into nature Charlottesville is. There are hiking trails and walking paths scattered throughout the city, and some even behind Darden's campus. There are so many hidden gems in Charlottesville and around the surrounding cities that I can't wait to explore with classmates on day trips. I can relate to that. That's why I'm living here.
I think she wrote that for you, John.
I know.
She knows her audience. She's not the only one here who knows their audience, John.
There you go. Now, Caroline, do you have another favorite who's not attending NCON?
After looking at INSEAD, then I jumped to have a look at who was there from London Business School, and
Of
another
course.
amazing profile. So I'll mention her. So this is Freya Twigden. Looks like she's a Brit. She was based in London, and she went to the University of Edinburgh, where she studied politics, and she's an entrepreneur. So she had spent some time in Shanghai and learned about kombucha and started a drinks company when she got back to the UK. And she has done a really good job at getting her kombucha into some retailers, major retailers. And it was one of the top drinks at Wimbledon this year. So
Oh,
that's a fantastic achievement.
what happened to
Um,
Pims?
yeah, yes, exactly. People are drinking less alcohol these days. And so she talks about the benefits of being in London. And as a Brit, of course, I'm delighted to read that. So she talks about the wonderful ecosystem of innovators, entrepreneurs in the UK, and how London Business School is really, really embedded within that system. And what a fantastic resource that is. And so I know that sometimes for British candidates, it's tempting to go overseas to do their MBA, to go to the US or go to one of the other European schools to get some international experience during the MBA program. But I think she's a great example of a Brit who has chosen very deliberately to stay in the UK because she sees the benefits that she has gained so far in her career. And she also talks in her profile about building her company in London and how that was such a fantastic experience because there's so many resources and mentors and being part of that ecosystem. And so she wants to continue to build on that. And LBS is a great platform to do that. And so it was great to read about a Brit who is really flourishing in London and embracing all that LBS has to offer.
Yeah, very true. So, Maria, do you have another favorite?
Yeah, I was really drawn to the profile of Asta Gupta, who is a student at IIM Ahmedabad, and she has a really interesting profile. She was involved in the production of television shows prior to business school. And one of her claims to fame is that she helped manage the Indian Idol TV show during the COVID pandemic. So, as with any industry, the entertainment industry was really hit and challenged by COVID, right? Because you need an army of people to produce a television show, right? You need mic operators and camera operators and lighting operators. And so I can't even imagine how difficult it must have been for her to have to manage all of these things. It's hard enough to manage a show even under perfect conditions. But so I thought that one of the things I liked about that was that we talk a lot about these non-traditional applicants. And I think sometimes one of the things I say to folks who have these non-traditional backgrounds is like, look, it's it's not just about what your industry is or what your title is. It's about whether or not you had impact. And there is no question in my mind that this person, yeah, they weren't working maybe at Goldman Sachs or whatever, but within that challenge that they were thrown into, they had to demonstrate exactly the sorts of raw materials of leadership and resourcefulness and creativity and management that, in fact, a top business school like IIM is looking for. And so I thought that that was a really interesting thing to highlight. As a side note, she also worked on a show called Saragama Little Champs. And one of my former colleagues from Star TV, back in the day when I worked on the Tata Sky project a very long time ago, one of my colleagues on that project is actually the CEO of Saragama. So I don't know if she ever interacted with him as part of that, but who knows? I might have a sort of a 6 degrees of separation with her. And the other thing that I really liked about her profile is that another thing that schools are looking for is like, who are you going to be when you come to our campus? How are you going to contribute to our community? And I thought it was really, really clever how she's bringing her media background to help IIM. So she basically has partnered with the school and they have started to bring attention to some of their current students. So she successfully secured national media coverage for 8 of her classmates across leading publications in India. And so I think that that's a really creative way for her, because a lot of times people will say like, okay, if a school asks for a contribution to our campus, which a lot of schools ask that essay question directly, and even if a school doesn't overtly ask that, it's kind of implicit, right? And so someone will say like, well, I'm a management consultant, so I'm going to join the management consulting club. I'm an investment banker, so I'm going to join the banking club. And so I think sometimes the non-traditional candidates might say to themselves, well, shoot, what am I going to say? And this is a perfect example of someone who is saying, well, what can I do? I'm really good at media. So how can I leverage that to benefit my community? And I thought that was just such a creative and resourceful thing for her to do. And I really admire it.
Absolutely. Caroline, just stepping back from the individual profiles, what do you think this says about who's attracted to get the MBA? And what does it say about the degree itself and its value and its prestige in the world today?
Well, I think it shows the incredible diversity of candidates and with such fascinating backgrounds from across the world. I think you've got a very global list here as well, which is great to see. Because sometimes when the US media is looking at business schools, they tend to focus on the US business schools and graduates of those schools. And so it's great to have such an internationally diverse group here. So I think that there are probably more candidates these days than there were 10 or 20 years ago with non-traditional backgrounds applying to business school. And I think that's wonderful to see because it enriches the experience for everybody, including those more traditional candidates, to have those very different backgrounds and perspectives represented in the classroom. And it shows that the MBA as a degree is alive and kicking, right? They're attracting incredibly talented. It's extraordinary the paths of many of these people that you've written about here and what they have accomplished at such an early stage in their careers. And so the fact that business schools all over the world are attracting the best and the brightest in their country is incredibly encouraging for the degree and for the future of those schools.
I'll say something else too that I glean from this and what I gather from every campus I visit. And my God, I've been to campuses all over the world. Every leading business school there is, I've been there. And I've sat down with MBA students in bars and over meals and, in libraries and just walking the pathways of a campus. And I got to tell you, it gives me hope for the future. I know we live in a world that's incredibly uncertain, that's highly polarized, particularly in the US. But when I talk to these people, these young people who are smart and ambitious in the right ways, it really gives me tremendous hope for the future. I tell a lot of the old guys around here in my book reading group that they've become somewhat cynical, but they're not exposed to all this raw talent and people who really want to make a difference in the world with their lives. And that's what I get from this. I get a sense of hope and a real positive vibe of what will come in the future. Not that we will not erase the challenges and all the problems that we have and or solve them for goodness sake, but that there will be plenty of people out there who have the capability, the will, the determination, even the love to make a difference in with their lives. And that is a beautiful thing. So I invite you to have a read, okay? If you were thinking about getting an MBA, this is a great story to just get your feet wet in because you'll see who your classmates will likely be, and you'll see how enriched that experience is going to be for you. Take a look. Meet the MBA Class of 2027 is the name of the story. Students today, leaders tomorrow, innovators always. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Thanks for listening.